After 5 years in an engagement, my fiancé's hurtful comment and doubts about marriage ended our relationship. His mother called me in tears. Jasper and I have been dating for a little over 5 years, and we have been engaged for the past 8 months. We met at a housewarming party through mutual acquaintances, just two folks who got along because they disliked IPAs and liked 90s cartoons. After dating for a year, moving in after 2, adopting Finn at 3, and getting engaged last summer, our relationship progressed. Simple proposal. Saturday morning hike to our favorite vista, where he eagerly removed the ring box from his pocket. Yes, I said. We quickly chose October and have been preparing everything, mostly me while he knows. Jasper started making odd statements while arranging our wedding 3 months ago, uncertain, not negative. When I showed him various places, he'd say, "That's a lot of money for just one day," or, "Do we really need to invite all those people?" I ignored it as male behavior or economic concern. Later, my wedding texts were answered late. When I sent him caterer options, he'd reply hours later with "looks fine" or "whatever you want." When I asked if everything was well, he'd say he was busy at work. His construction company had some big projects. Last month, he spent more time with coworker Dean. They had beers or watched games at Dean's house after work. Again, nothing special, but more often he seemed distant when he got home, checking his phone more and paying less. I tried to tell my best friend Nora. She suggested a date night to bond over pre-wedding worries. Last Friday, I made reservations at a new Italian restaurant downtown, wore a nice dress, not something fancy, just something I hadn't worn in a while, and bought Jasper's favorite beer to keep in the fridge. Date night failed. He barely spoke during supper. He revealed that he wasn't sure he was ready when I mentioned finalizing our honeymoon plans, everything from honeymoon to wedding and marriage. Shocked, he was uncertain after 5 years together and 8 months engaged. He recalled talking to Dean about how marriage changes things and mentioned Dean's brother's terrible divorce. When I asked as the conversation grew, I tried not to make a noise in the restaurant. While feeling like my life was falling apart, we barely touched our entree. Silence and tension permeated the ride home. He avoided talking at our apartment, saying he wanted time to think before sleeping on the couch. The next morning was awful. We navigated a shared Airbnb like strangers. He suggested lunch with Dean and coworkers in downtown sports bar The Rusty Nail and watched the game, too emotionally exhausted to protest. A few hours later, Nora called to tell me to leave the flat. We had coffee, and I unpacked everything. Nora listened intently, suggesting Jasper was worried about the wedding. I usually decompress by wandering Target. After coffee, I bought useless throw pillows and shampoo, because retail therapy is therapy, right? By early evening, I was relaxed and went home. Logan, Jasper's coworker whom I met at the business Christmas party, texted me as I drove into our apartment complex. The message inquired about my well-being and noted that the Rusty Nail had gotten strange. I called Logan instead of messaging. He was initially hesitant to talk, but after some coaxing he did. The boys have been bugging Jasper about wedding plans, and when Dean asked if he was ready to be with one woman forever, Jasper expressed doubts. Jasper, evidently drunk, said, "If you were prettier, I'd be more excited about marrying." Dean asked him what was holding him back. Jasper laughed. Logan told me he and other guys confronted Jasper about the comment, but Jasper got defensive and said they couldn't take a joke. I cried for 20 minutes in my car after that call. The man I loved for 5 years, whom I believe loved me, joked about my appearance as a reason he wasn't ready to marry me. Jasper was asleep on the couch as I entered, still in his clothes, the place reeking of old beer. I locked Finn in the bedroom. I smelled Jasper's apology meal coffee and bacon on Sunday morning. He looked hung over and sheepish, like food would fix everything. I told him what Logan told me, and his face dropped. He claimed ignorance and inebriation to lessen the situation. He said he murmured something dumb to stop the boys taunting him for being strapped down. He exacerbated guys being guys by supporting them. We discussed him humiliating me in front of his friends, but he denied that was his goal. He said that he was worried about wedding costs and pressure, but I couldn't get over how he exploited my beauty as a cruel joke. I couldn't stay at his flat. I took my handbag to Oscar's apartment. My brother has always been my refuge in tough times. When I told him what happened, he was furious and ready to face Jasper. I calmed him by stating I needed space and a place to stay until I thought things out. Jasper texted apologies and invitations to chat at home throughout Sunday. Only once did I say I needed time. I phoned in sick on Monday because I couldn't handle taking dentist office calls while pretending everything was fine. About 9 a.m., Wendy, Jasper's mother, called Monday morning. We've always gotten along, and she's been more supportive than my mother who lives in Florida with husband number 3. She seemed agitated, saying Jasper had called her the night before and I needed to know something. She asked if we could meet somewhere to chat, so I'm waiting in my car outside the coffee shop where I'm supposed to meet Wendy in 15 minutes, wondering what else to know and if my 5-year relationship. I never thought I'd write this. I keep looking at my engagement ring wondering whether I should have expected this. Was I wrong? Or did things shift so fast? Should I follow? Wendy, how could she say anything to fix this? First, I'd like to thank everyone for their overwhelming support of my piece. I wasn't expecting thousands of comments. I tried to read as many as I could between weeping bouts and stress eating emergency Oreos from my brother's pantry. I met Wendy, Jasper's mother. I'll discuss it at the end of this update. So much has happened in the past 2 days, and I'm still processing everything. I called in sick again after publishing on Monday. I had just 2 sick days in the preceding year. Sounded like death on the phone, but my supervisor was nice. I spent most of the morning in Oscar's spare room storage closet, reading your comments and organizing my thoughts. At lunchtime, Nora brought sandwiches from a deli near her hospital. Despite not eating since Sunday, I forced myself to consume a few bites. Nora softly reminded me I couldn't ignore Jasper forever. We lived together, shared accounts, and had a talk. She was right. I couldn't stay at my brother's place forever, especially since Oscar's girlfriend was coming over for dinner. I didn't want to be Taco Tuesday's sad third wheel. I took a shower, grabbed one of Oscar's hoodies, Don't Judge. It felt wonderful, and drove home after Nora left. I practiced my speech the whole time. I would remain calm adult and receive answers without yelling or crying. Jasper's truck was in our parking spot when I pulled in. He should have worked. My stomach knotted as I approached our second-floor apartment. I opened the door to find him on the couch in sweatpants, looking exhausted, surrounded by wedding planning binders I'd made over the last 8 months. Little Finn snuggled with him. He was surprised and relieved to see me and stated he was taking personal time off. He was probably reviewing all the wedding preparations to figure out how he bungled it so badly. I stood by the door, not ready to sit next to him, and told him that wedding plans wouldn't change his mind. We had a long, difficult conversation. He apologized again for the bar comment, calling it terrible and not believing it. He said he was trying to appear cool in front of his buddies. When I asked why he would say something he didn't believe, which made me even angrier before the bar incident, I reminded him during dinner that he had misgivings about our wedding. Even when sober, he admitted to being anxious about a late work assignment, Dean's marriage horror stories, and our wedding money. He didn't tell me his problems until they exploded in the worst way. As we talked, he revealed a new fear becoming his father. Jasper rarely talked about his father, who left him at 12 after having an affair with a coworker and moving to Arizona to start new. Jasper had always said it didn't bother him, but he now admits he was worried about a genetic predisposition to cheat or abandon his. I explained that he was not his father and that genetics do not affect relationships. His comment was telling. He wondered if he could pledge eternity when it seemed impossible from his childhood. He hesitated to say he had spoken with Logan when I asked if he had told anyone else since Logan joined the group. They had become closer and Logan had relationship troubles. This explained why Logan called me about the bar incident. He knew Jasper's concerns. When I asked Jasper about his problem, the conversation soured. He was honest. He was scared, anxious, and unsure about marriage while loving me. He said he kept thinking about how his parents were happy until they weren't and didn't want to put us in that situation. I wondered why he hadn't spoken up sooner. He said he was afraid I wouldn't think he loved me. I saw the irony. Hiding his anxieties created the situation he wanted to avoid. I inquired if his joke about my appearance was a genuine lack of interest, and he said he'd always thought I was gorgeous. He mentioned our first meeting at the housewarming party and my green sweater and his terrible beer pong skill. He said he made the comment out of insecurity and a desire to look in control in front of his friends rather than stuck. I asked a crucial question as we talked: were his doubts against marriage in general, or just marrying me? His sluggish response told me everything. He finally admitted that he was worried about marriage and commitment, but also about our long-term compatibility. This hurt more than comments about my beauty. He was still unclear if we were compatible after 5 years. He explained how we had evolved since our early 20s, my increased need for preparation versus spontaneity, and his abandoned hopes of launching a business. He asked if we had grown closer or apart. Even though I told him partnerships change, I was emotionally weary by then. I told him I needed time to think about his public humiliation secret fears and now our compatibility anxiety. He told us to try therapy or couples counseling, but I insisted on separation. He noticed my phone vibrating as I packed more clothes. I found 3 when he missed calls. With everything going on, I forgot about our coffee date. Jasper looked worried after I mentioned this. My mother called, crying the morning before, stating she needed to talk about something urgent after calling her Sunday. He replied clearly when I asked what he told her. He was pale and reluctant to look at me. He made vague references to their fight and his doubts, but I was dubious. When pressed, he said he couldn't explain and suggested I ask his mother. I called Wendy after leaving. She reacted instantly, worried I hadn't attended our meet. I replied I was with Jasper at the flat. She requested that we meet promptly since she had important news. Her voice seemed strange when I mentioned being with Jasper, which reinforced my fears that I was missing something essential. After agreeing to meet Wendy in 30 minutes, I asked Jasper what his mother knew that I didn't. Remorse and resignation filled his face. When he looked up, he said he should have told me anything and suggested I go to his mother, promising to leave when I returned. I rapidly packed up a week's worth of closed toiletries and my laptop. Jasper told me he loved me at the door, but I said love isn't enough. Haley, Jasper's sister, called me on my way to Wendy. She was worried about Jasper and me after hearing from Dean about the bar situation and seeing that Jasper wasn't responding to her texts. When her mother was unhappy, Haley looked surprised when I told her I was meeting Wendy and asked if it was about Bree. The name struck me like a truck. What about Bree? Haley's horror and hasty retreat suggested she had accidentally revealed something significant. She apologized and recommended me to listen to Wendy, but refused to elaborate despite subsequent attempts. Wendy was waiting at a window table when I entered the coffee shop parking lot. She had red, puffy eyes. I thought what she would say would change everything. My phone buzzed with a text as I reached her table. Jasper said, "Whatever my mom tells you, please remember that I do love you. I just got scared and made terrible mistakes. I'll understand if you can't forgive me." I put my phone away, breathed deeply, sat across from Wendy. Second update. Thanks for supporting my earlier posts. Reading your comments is comforting and overwhelming. Many of them have gone unanswered, but I read them and appreciate the advice. Nora's flat is my new writing spot. I hated returning to Oscar's or our apartment after meeting Wendy yesterday. Nora's pull-out couch is slightly cozier than Oscar's storage room futon. Pepper, her cat, doesn't mind me bawling over my oatmeal at 2 a.m. The Wendy appointment, where do I start? The coffee shop was packed on Tuesday afternoon. Computer-using students filled most tables at a nearby community college after classes. Wendy reserved a corner booth with high backs for privacy. She changed since our monthly family dinner 3 weeks ago. Her gorgeous hair was unkempt, and she wore no makeup. Wendy has always worn mascara and lipstick. In my 5 years of knowing her, this is her routine. Just like others need coffee to start the day, she stood and hugged me when I came smelling like her lavender dryer sheets. Instead of a caramel with extra whipped cream, I requested a black coffee. It felt improper to order anything fun for this. After some awkward small talk, when he got to the point, Jasper broke down Sunday night and called her. She understood his concerns about commitment and becoming like his father, but Bree drove his behavior more immediately. I almost choked on coffee. Jasper's new project coordinator, Bree, what about the woman he mentioned briefly? Wendy hurriedly ripped a napkin into tiny pieces to explain Dominic's love for Bree. Over several months, Jasper told his mother there was no physical contact, but an emotional connection made him rethink our relationship. I sat there, trying to understand this, feeling like the coffee shop was tilted, creating a timeline in my head while Wendy spoke. Bree started working with Jasper around New Year. I briefly met her at the March corporate holiday dinner. Jasper had already changed. He was more aloof, checked his phone more, and spent more time with coworkers. What I thought was more stress from his big task was Bree. When I asked Wendy why she was telling me this instead of protecting her son, she cried as she explained her marriage dissolution became clear before Jasper's father moved to Arizona. With a coworker, there were months of alienation, harsh work, and staged disputes to create distance rather than face the truth. She left me in the dark as Jasper took the coward's way out to avoid repeating the past. The bar comment became clear, not intoxicated folly, but a subconscious attempt to harm our connection so he didn't have to make the hard decision. We chatted for over an hour. Wendy recounted how she battled to save her marriage after finding the affair and blamed herself for not being. Before I parted in the parking lot, she said the hardest lesson I learned was that you can't make someone choose you. They either do or they don't, and anything in between is just delaying the inevitable. Afterwards, I stared at my phone in my car for a while. Jasper sent 3 more texts, all variations on, "I'm sorry," and "I love you," but Bree was not mentioned, hinting that the truth was buried. I called Nora instead of responding and begged to stay at her flat. She did not hesitate or ask questions. She simply said she was setting up the pull-out couch and would pick up dinner on her way home. Everyone needs that kind of friend in a crisis. Finally, I wrote to Jasper, "I know about Bree. Don't contact me again until you're ready to tell me the complete truth. I'll be collecting more of my things tomorrow while you're at work." I blocked his phone number for the night. I wanted time to think without his explanations. On her way to Nora's, Haley called. When he had overheard Jasper and Dean discussing the matter last Thursday, the chat confirmed and expanded on her information. She made her brother pledge to tell me the truth after the weekend. He had broken his promise. Haley's unwavering support amazed me most. Despite being Jasper's sister, she supported me. My relief was profound. I was worried about losing Jasper and his family, who had become like family to me. Nora's flat was perfect that night, a neutral space where I could exist without explanation. Dining on the living room floor, her coffee table was covered in online class papers. As we watched a baking competition we didn't understand, its simple normalcy saved me during my emotional turmoil. I used my phone to relive 5 years of vacations, holidays, and everyday selfies with Jasper. After Nora went to bed, our engagement photos showed us smiling like lottery winners. I was mentally planning for the next day, going to the apartment, while Jasper was at work packing more stuff, possibly talking to the landlord about breaking our lease, when an unknown number texted me. "Hi, Margot, this is Bree. I know you have blocked Jasper. Can we meet tomorrow? There's more to the story which you should know, only the 2 of us." My pulse raced as I glanced at the letter, wondering what else could be and why this woman would want to tell me directly. I scribbled a response after what seemed like an hour, but was actually minutes. Where and when. Third update. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for their overwhelming support in my previous post. Your comments have helped me through restless nights more than you realize. Yes, I'm alive sometimes, or easier. My visit with Bree went differently than expected, probably impartial. We met at a little brunch establishment. She was nervously checking her phone when I arrived. She seemed less polished and more human than at the corporate party. Her ponytail was messy, and she wore little makeup. Her unease caught my attention immediately. Shouldn't she have been more confident if she got involved with my fiancé emotionally? She kept fiddling with her coffee cup, avoiding eye contact. The talk presented 2 major surprises. First, Bree didn't know Jasper liked her until Dean casually mentioned it. She said she and Jasper worked on a project together, occasionally texting after hours, but never violating limits according to her. She never flirted with him or promoted anything other than friendship. She showed me their work-related messaging history and the occasional meme, nothing romantic or inappropriate. She had a 3-year boyfriend who occasionally joined them for happy hours. The second insight affected Dean. He was apparently intentionally causing trouble. Bree overheard him at work, encouraging Jasper to consider his options before settling down, calling her someone who gets Jasper better than I do. She explained that Dean had been telling everyone at work that Jasper was having second thoughts about the wedding, joking about him being trapped and missing out on his freedom. After our meeting, I felt unusually peaceful. Bree wasn't the monster I expected. She was a victim of Jasper's manipulation and fray. Before leaving, she said, "You seem like someone who understands their worth. Don't let anyone make you doubt it." My perspective and tactics changed after the encounter. The focus shifted from Jasper and me to Dean's detrimental influence, Jasper's family, and my role in this. I emailed Haley later to organize a neutral family gathering at her place because I wasn't ready to be alone with Jasper. She agreed fast. I remember yesterday's lunch. Her small yet pleasant flat was organized by Haley. She ordered simple pasta and salad from the Italian restaurant near her building. When he arrived, first then Dean. He attended because Haley insisted, and Jasper, who looked exhausted, did too. The first 20 minutes were terrible. We ate pasta at Haley's dining table, talking about the weather and her new coffee table. The elephant in the room was almost eating our meal, but no one wanted to confess it. Finally, Wendy broke the silence by reiterating that we were there to face what had happened and find a solution, not to socialize. That opened the floodgates. I told Dean all I learned from Bree. Watching Dean's expression, the uncertainty and defensiveness in his face said it all. He tried to help his friend, but Haley cut him off immediately. Jasper sat calmly staring at his unturned pasta. He confessed that Bree had been pleasant, but he had twisted it out of fear of becoming his father. Wendy recoiled at that comment. Jasper seemed embarrassed when I told the joke at the bar. He said it was his cowardice, not Bree. Dean was teasing him about being whipped, so he shouted something mean to appear cool. Jasper says my appearance never mattered. Dean dismissed it as guy talk, but Haley reminded everyone that Jasper and I were getting married in 3 months. That simple comment, a reminder of our fast-approaching wedding, hit me hard. After sending save-the-dates and paying deposits, my dress was hanging in Nora's spare closet for final modification. I subtly remarked that I no longer believed the wedding would happen. The room quieted. Jasper began to protest, but I stopped him. He stated he spent the week trying to figure out how we got here. I realized it wasn't simply Bree that joke or Dean's harm. Jasper was dishonest with me and himself. I said that I had ignored his lack of interest in wedding arrangements, his increased time with Dean, and his emotional isolation for months. I made excuses because it was easier than facing the truth, but I deserved someone who believed in me and didn't need a family intervention to figure out their feelings. Wendy and Haley said, "Shut up," when Dean made a snarky remark about my dress. Jasper said he loved me, but was frightened of messing up. He already had. I said we talked for hours. There were tears yelling, especially between Haley and Dean, and hard truths. Old wounds reopened and new ones formed. When everyone was emotionally exhausted at midnight, we had to cancel the wedding. Our 5-year romance ended, not a fight or a dramatic exit, just a sense that something fundamental had broken between us. Trust it might be rebuilt someday, but not for an October wedding, not with Bree still working at Jasper's company, and not with that joke link. Haley brought me back to Nora's and said my relationship with her, Winnie, hadn't altered. She stated I was still family despite Jasper's actions. After returning to Nora's apartment, I sat on the pull-out couch in the dark, realizing that 5 years had passed, the wedding had been canceled, and the future was unknown. I didn't cry right away. I made a list on my phone's notes app, call the venue to cancel the deposit, is likely gone, return the ring, contact, guess, relocate, out of the apartment, change relationship status on social media. Past 2 a.m., I shuffled out of her bedroom. Lena, she heard me enter and checked on me. She sat beside me in the pullout and threw her arm around my shoulders. As I told her the wedding was off, we sat like that till daylight, not talking and just living in my new craziness. Jasper texted me this morning to meet to discuss the apartment lease, separating our accounts, and what to do with our shared furniture. So mature, so final. Oscar also asked when he could help me pack. My brother is always practical. My mother asked if she should cancel her flight to the wedding after hearing from one of my relatives who follows Haley on Instagram. My finger feels heavy with the ring. Twisting it unconsciously was a nervous habit I didn't realize. Nothing fancy, just a round diamond in white gold. Jasper chose it because it reflected our classic relationship. I called the venue this morning. Ironically, the coordinator was kind, but firm. The deposit is non-refundable. So close to the date, 8,000 lost trips, new clothes and outings have been cut for nearly a year. My cerebral half cringes at the waist, while my emotional side is indifferent about money. Haley texted me that she had found a photographer who might move our money to a future event. Wendy promised to tell relatives about the cancellation to avoid awkwardness, small kindness. Afterwards, Dean replied with a non-apologetic text stating things happened for a reason and I'd find someone better. I deleted it without replying. Bree wrote me a quick message apologizing and assuring me that nothing happened. Strangely, I trust her. Jasper's anxieties and Dean's manipulations seem to have made her collateral damage. Simple reminders like my wedding planning binder and my tote bag, our shared Spotify soundtrack for the celebration, and my laptop honeymoon research folder are the hardest. A lost future in small pieces. I went to work against Nora's advice to take a mental health day. Reddit browsing and overthinking appeared more distracting than answering phones and filling insurance claims. At home, coworkers have been surprisingly normal, either unaware or respectfully ignoring my puffy eyes and missing engagement ring. Tomorrow, Jasper and I will exchange keys and discuss the place at a coffee shop. Since my name is on the lease, he'll stay with his cousin until he leaves. Another practical discussion about leaving a relationship. Part of me doubts this. Last month, we debated reception music and tried different cakes, separating kitchen appliances, and disputing who keeps the PlayStation. Wendy stated that dinner endings are rarely clean or perfect. Most of the time, they're messy, sad, and complicated. She should know. After Jasper's father left, she rebuilt her life, had 2 children, and found happiness. You wouldn't believe she'd been through so much. Looking at her now, maybe there's hope. Now I'm taking things day by day. Tomorrow I'll manage the flat and money. Next week I'll start house hunting. The future after that is murky, but real. Haley texted me to meet for coffee this weekend. She said her longtime family friend Owen had offered his holiday cabin if I needed a getaway to clear my thoughts. Jasper's family's unexpected help is much appreciated. Accepting Owen's offer is up in the air. Something inside me wants to process and I understand I need Nora's realistic sympathy, Oscar's protective big brother energy, Wendy and Haley's complex allegiance. Right now, I'll stop using my wedding countdown app. We won't pin reception decorations or practice Jasper's surname signature. That future is over, but I'm hoping for something else. It's weird to write this final report for my new apartment. It's been 3 months since the family dinner that ended my engagement, 3 months of rebuilding my life in unexpected ways. Since several of you have requested an update, here is the good, the bad, and the unexpected. First, practicalities. After we broke up, Jasper left our shared flat within a week. Oscar and Nora helped me pack his possessions while he was at work, placing everything neatly labeled in the living room. It was strange to divide 5 years of shared existence into his and my. The coffee maker he got for his birthday, the throw blanket I bought on our weekend trip to that small mountain town, and the frame photos we hung on every wall made the apartment feel hollow like a stage set. After 2 more weeks, the leasing management let me out for a month's payment to escape our relationship's ghost in every room was worth the money. Finding a new home was harder than planned. My single-person budget is tighter due to the bad rental market. My 1-bedroom apartment across town farther from work has a tiny balcony where I'm growing herbs and dollar store pots. The basil fades, but the mint grows against all odds. I saw that as symbolic. A financial adjustment when planning for 1 car insurance, streaming subscriptions, and even groceries become my responsibility. I now use coupons by store brands, use a spreadsheet, think twice before ordering takeout. Growing up lessons I never thought I'd need at 29. Marriage merchants were surprisingly accommodating. The venue withheld our deposit, but sent me a nice card wishing me happiness. The florist refunded half our payment despite their no refund policy. In a shocking but thoughtful move, the DJ suggested his rehab working brother. I keep the engagement ring in its box in my dresser. Jasper advised me to keep or sell it because returning it was bad karma. Not sure what to do with it. I sometimes forget it's there, and other times I open the box and stare at it, wondering how something so small could have had so much potential. Social media had its own horror. I waited 2 weeks to update my relationship status to avoid questions. I completed it at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Well-meaning friends asked what happened. Distant relatives prayed, and former classmates I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly entered my direct conversations with phony fear that felt like interest. I wrote a brief, ambiguous comment about mutual decisions and requested privacy, then turned off notifications and threw my phone across the couch. Later, I posted a photo of my new apartment with the caption, "New Beginnings." It got fewer likes than my engagement announcement, but it felt more authentic. Since the breakup, we've talked about practical issues like mail that arrived at the wrong place, the shared cloud storage account we forgot to separate, and returning a borrowed air fryer to his sister. Each conversation was polite, but tense like acquaintances forced to make small talk in an elevator. He still works for the same job, is friends with Dean, though Haley says they had a falling out recently, and Jasper contacted me last month and asked if we could meet. We hadn't seen each other since the key exchange at the apartment, and I was curious about his goals. We met in a coffee shop near my new apartment, as Nora half-jokingly suggested. He was leaner, had larger circles under his eyes, and were assured I didn't recognize. After 10 minutes of stiff small talk about work and the weather, he took out a journal and said, "I've been seeing someone," and my heart stuttered before he said a therapist. The notebook was part of his therapy daily reflections on patterns and habits he wanted to change. He'd been reflecting on his relationship with his father, his friendship with Dean, and how he treated me. He didn't ask for forgiveness or reconnect. "I should have done this years ago," he said. "Maybe things would have been different." He was the most self-aware I ever seen, and I hope treatment would help him, not for my sake that ship has sailed, but because carrying so much unresolved familial pain was exhausting. I'm glad he said they need good people in their lives. One of the oddest parts of this separation has been keeping in touch with Jasper's family. When he texts me weekly, usually with hilarious memes or garden updates. Haley and I get breakfast every other Sunday at this small cafe midway between our apartments. I like to think this tragedy has given me a profound awakening, allowing me to rediscover myself. Some days I feel emancipated, relieved that I didn't marry someone who could harm me so carelessly. Other days, when my hot water heater breaks, or I can't reach something on the high shelf Jasper would have retrieved for me, I miss the practical benefits of collaboration. I've also started therapy, not because of the breakup, but because it made me realize how much I compromised myself in that relationship, how many red flags I'd ignored because they were wrapped in familiarity, and how much of myself I'd sacrificed to accommodate Jasper's needs and insecurities. My therapist suggested I restore some of my lost self-dating. Seems far off, even though my coworkers have started suggesting I meet this great guy they know. I'm still learning how to be comfortable in my own company. The most unexpected resulted from canceling our honeymoon. We planned a 10-day trip to the coast and rented a little home with a veranda overlooking the water. Then Nora suggested something radical. Go on the trip alone? You've never traveled alone, she said. Maybe it's time. 10 days alone in a lovely home designed for two sounded like the start of a tragic indie film. But the more I thought about it, the more appealing it seemed. I could wake up whenever I wanted, explore without limits, and read a book in one sitting. So I'm going to a honeymoon cabin alone next week. I've packed 3 paperbacks, downloaded several podcasts, and bought a new bikini for comfort rather than appearance. My mother thinks I'm crazy. Oscar offered to come with me, but I declined. Haley suggested I use a dating app to see who's out there, perhaps, but probably not. I went grocery shopping the other day when our song played over the store speakers. 3 months ago, I would have hidden in the frozen food department holding back tears. This time I felt only a faint ache, like if I was pressing on a bruise that had mostly healed progress, not perfection. I'll be honest, my new apartment shower has unusual temperature fluctuations. I killed another basil plant yesterday, and I still occasionally text Jasper about something funny before realizing we don't do. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.